Right, and one of the bigger surprises in the remaining 8 teams in the NFL playoffs is the Washington Commanders. They'll head to Ford Field and take on the top-seeded Lions on Saturday night. The Commanders come to this game after winning 6 in a row. Their last game coming against the Buccaneers in the wild card round for their first playoff win in 19 years. What's your biggest takeaway of the Commanders' run right now?
Well, first, congratulations to the Commanders. It's been a great run. It was a team with a win total going into the year,
Mm,
6.5. Pretty amazing. You bring in a new coach, you have a new GM, kind of like a new
yeah.
look to the whole organization with the ownership change that they've had a few years ago. And then you get the rookie quarterback playing at such a high level. And it's been really fun to watch the Commanders' offense this season and also the defense, a team that doesn't have that much talent defensively, but has a lot of leaders kind of
Hmm.
playing hard for Dan Quinn. So it is cool to see. But I do also think this Washington Commanders team has been extremely lucky. So they beat the Titans before a Week 14 bye week. Titans turned out to be like the worst team in the league, so I'm not going to put too much
Yeah.
stock into that win. But then you look at how they ended the regular season. They beat the Saints by a point in a game where the Saints were playing Jake Hayner and Spencer Rattler at quarterback. The next week, they're down big to the Eagles with Kenny Pickett playing most of the game because Jalen Hurts suffered a concussion. Next week, Falcons, Michael Penix, first road start, prime time, great atmosphere in Washington. Falcons are up by 10 going into halftime, and the Commanders end up coming back with that offense and kind of playing ball control and winning the coin toss at overtime and scoring and not letting the Falcons have a shot. And they clinch a playoff spot there. And then they clinch the sixth seed by beating the Cowboys. But it was a game that was very lackluster, and the Cowboys were starting Trey Lance. And it took a Marcus Mariota
Yeah.
throw to Terry McLaurin to win the game with a couple seconds left. So I feel like it was a very sketchy 4-0 end to the season in December and
Hmm.
January for the Commanders. But then they go out, they beat the Buccaneers. I felt like they were the better team, but the Buccaneers also shot themselves in the foot with a lot of mistakes. They stall
Yeah.
on the opening drive when it looks like they were moving down the field with ease. You have the Baker Mayfield fumble with the Bucks having a 4-point lead in setting up the Commanders in the red zone, and they take the lead. And then the Bucks have a real golden chance to not only take the lead but also take off a lot of time. You have 2nd and 1 in the
Hmm.
red zone, and then they are stopped short on a running play, and then the snap count's messed up. They lose 3 yards, have to kick a field goal, and then they never get the ball back because the
Yeah.
Commanders and Daniels orchestrates that drive that ends in that doinked in field goal. So just another kind of wrinkle of luck for Washington. So I feel
Yeah.
like what they're doing isn't sustainable, and now we're going to really see this team up against it against a rested Lions team
Hmm.
indoors in a raucous environment. I do feel like this is kind of the game where maybe the Commanders' offense could have some success, and I'll make that case for it later. But I feel like this defense could get exposed against Jared Goff and all the weapons the Lions have with a really good offensive line.
All right, Nate. The point spread for Saturday's game is currently set with the Lions being a 9-point favorite, and the total is set at 55. What is your take on both of those numbers?
Yeah, so I think if this is the regular season and if it was the same amount of rest for each side, I feel like this point spread
Hmm.
would be a little bit high, kind of in that 9 and a half range.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's going to get to 10 anywhere. I feel like that might be the
Hmm.
stopping point where we see Commanders money. But when you factor in the Lions, who really needed that rest, they were playing a lot of big games down the stretch, including that Week 18 game against the Vikings to get the 1 seed. If
Hmm.
not, they would have been the 5 seed and would have had to travel on the road for most of the playoffs. So I feel like the Lions are really going to benefit from the rest, the home field.
Yeah.
You also have to think the Commanders coming off like a really emotional, historic win for the franchise, first playoff win since January 2006. So I'm not going to say there's going to be a letdown, but it's kind of like almost that they really were all in for that game, win that game. How much do they have left in the tank, especially having to
Yeah.
play so many high leverage games down the stretch? And now you're facing a team off a bye week. So I talked about the Commanders' good fortune, and that's going to keep me off the side because I think the line value might be on Washington, but I also see an opportunity that they get blown out of this game. Where I see there's not value, but the way I'm looking to bet this game is the over. I just think that there's a super high chance that both teams are going to score a lot of points. I'm actually considering the first half over because I feel like the Lions are going to come out hot with the scripted plays. Ben Johnson, who actually was a candidate for the Commanders' job last year. I think that he was one of their top choices and turned him down. So I'm sure he'll be super motivated to drop some really good plays over the extra time to prepare when he's not interviewing with NFL teams. So I could see a scenario Detroit comes out hot. they get out to a potentially a big lead and maybe they slow down in the second half. So that's why I'm looking at first
Mhm.
half over. But at the same time, I do think the Commanders have an opportunity to move the ball here. We saw the Vikings in Week 18 move the ball on the Lions, but Sam Darnold was just terrible in the red zone. So I think if the Commanders can turn seven into or red zone trips to 7 points instead of three, and we know Dan Quinn
Yeah.
has been aggressive this year in terms of going with it, which is something you'd want if you have such a high total or you have the over with
Mhm.
such a high total in the mid 50s. It does add up where I am looking towards the over. I do see both teams moving the ball. The Lions, I think, can maybe score and not punt a lot, and then the Commanders are going to try to match them throughout the game. So I do think there's an opportunity for points here. I'm just trying to figure out if I want to go first half over 27 and a half
Mhm.
or full game over 55 and a half. I will say I'm going to wait a little bit to see if this comes down a little because I do think there's a chance because the total's so high, a lot of the kind of like the math people are going to say, no, this should be like 54, 53 and a half, and are going to bet the under closer to game day. So I'm going to wait out and see what I could get, but looking towards over in this NFC divisional round game.